From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report this St. Patrick's Day weekend. I'm Tyne Morgan, and here's what's in store over the next 60 minutes. Trump turns up the heat on tariff talks, renewing fears that soybean growers could be caught in the line of fire.
We've heard the Chinese say directly that they would retaliate against American soybean imports to that country. That's a huge deal.
It's those tariffs also the topic of this week's John's World.
Steel tariffs, an idea whose time will never come.
Plus, we're on the road with Machinery Pete to the East Coast.
Auction prices on good condition used tractors, whatever the size, have been just kind of shockingly strong.
You'll also have the chance to meet the man behind the 500 bushel per acre corn crop last year. And March came in like a lion, but will it go out like a lamb?
An active weather pattern, to say the least, across the country. I'll sort it out for you coming up with my forecast.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Now for the news. The president's tariff talk heating up this week, and now it's as much as 100 Chinese goods that could be in the line of fire. The president now demanding his cabinet secretaries and top advisors to hit China with steep tariffs. That's in response to allegations of intellectual property theft by China, and those tariffs could be placed on more than 100 Chinese products ranging from electronics to furniture. That news, plus a shakeup in the president's cabinet, sending waves through the stock market. The Dow dropped more than 200 points midweek. But it's that news also adding to concerns over a possible trade war with China that could come at the cost of U.S. soybeans. A possible fix to Section 199A is now in writing, but it's uncertain just what vehicle the measure will need to be tied to in order to pass through Congress and make into law. Under this agreement, the tax provisions goes back to language similar to what was under the previous Section 199, but adds an additional deduction of up to 20% of net income. Farm CPA Paul Neefer says it's anticipated that this deduction will equate to up to 1% of gross sales plus 11 to 20% of net farm income from those sales. Now, while an agreement is in place, the hurdle may be getting it passed, with Democrats saying they will not let the measure be tacked onto the omnibus spending bill unless the GOP is willing to budge on other pieces of the new tax code. The saga over the renewable fuel standard continues as the Environmental Protection Agency is now proposing to pardon East Coast refiner Philadelphia Energy Solutions from complying with the nation's RFS. It's a government bailout with a settlement filed Monday proposing to waive a portion of the $350 million owed by Philadelphia Energy to the renewable fuel standard. The EPA agreeing that the refiner will only have to pay about half of those costs now and the other half once and if the bankruptcy settlement with Philadelphia Energy is resolved. The proposal still needs to be approved by the bankruptcy court, but the dispute now has a 10-day public comment period, and the renewable fuels industry is opposing the remove. The refiner is blaming the RFS for its financial woes, but Renewable Fuels Association CEO Bob Dineen saying, quote, "At first blush, this strikes us as rewarding bad behavior, and it sets an extraordinarily bad precedent." End quote. Well, a lawsuit that spans over a couple years over MIR 162 is coming to a close. In a nationwide class action lawsuit, Syngenta will pay a $1.5 billion settlement to corn farmers, grain handling facilities, as well as ethanol plants for corn priced after September 15, 2013. Our reporting partners at AgWeb say all farmers are eligible for the settlement. That includes those who did not participate in previous Syngenta lawsuits. The settlement must be approved by a federal judge in Kansas, and it does not include the exporters Cargill and ADM that are also suing Syngenta. Well, as milk prices struggle, many dairy producers are facing a dire situation, with some being forced to sell out. And now more than 80 dairy farmers are left trying to find a new home for their milk. Dean Foods dropping contracts with those producers, giving them a 90-day notice. And now our reporting partners at Farm Journal's Milk say Dairy Farmers of America, the largest dairy cooperative in the U.S., say they don't have room to take those producers on. 2 weeks prior to USDA's scheduled release of the annual planting intentions report, Allendale just releasing its annual acreage survey results this week, and it shows farmers are favoring soybeans this year. The results from the 27 states show growers plan to plant a record number of soybean acres at 92.1 million acres. The survey shows corn plantings could see a big drop at 88.5 million acres. If that holds true, that's nearly a 2 million acre increase for beans and a 1.65 million acre drop for corn. Allendale's Rich Nelson Nelson says when you break it down state by state, it's the findings in North Dakota that are something to note.
Surprisingly, what we found was despite the fact that these producers are moving away from corn in North Dakota, they actually suggested they are not moving into beans. So we had a high soybean number, but it was not from the movement away from North Dakota. Most of those producers are actually moving into spring wheat instead.
Allendale's all wheat acreage number shows wheat acres gaining ground at 46.88 million. Well, dryness in the western half of the country playing into the decision of what to plant this year. But the weather phenomenon behind the drought in the Central Plains this winter is actually fading away. At just 3 months in duration, this La Nina is one of the shortest in about a decade. Australia's Bureau of Meteorology says that the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific Ocean have steadily warmed since December. In addition to the dried out fields from Kansas to Texas, La Nina also to blame for the parched soybean crops in Argentina. All right, that's it for the news. We need to take a quick break, and then Mike Hoffman has a look at your planting forecast for some of you. Plus, John Phipps takes another deep dive into what tariffs on steel mean for U.S. farmers. That's all ahead.
Agriculture's national forecast is brought to you by Elevo Seed Treatment from Bayer.
All right, welcome back. Time now to check weather with meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, talks of La Nina fading, but how long could that actually take to see some relief in the plains?
Thanks, Tyne. Well, I think we're in kind of that transition phase where we are getting some storms coming into the west. Some of them come through the plains, and a lot of the next ones look like they will, and then they go up the eastern seaboard. So I do think that we have some hope to start to see some relief from the drought in the central plains. Let's hope these storm systems do affect it in that way. You can see, though, you go back a month and it was a lot drier into the central Mississippi Valley, and that has improved going through the last few months. You can see how things have dramatically improved through that area. Still on the dry side, Black Hills into eastern Montana, but that's a lot better than it has been, and some dry areas in the southeast as well. But the worst area still the southwestern plains into the southwest, including southern California. Here's the overall pattern as we look at the jet stream for this coming week, and you can see that storm system moving through the central part of the country. By Tuesday, that's into the eastern sections, it looks like, with the ridge still trying to pop up again, but look at the trough still off the west coast. As we head through the week, then we will see another system kind of buckle that ridge a little bit, bring some moisture into the central plains, probably Thursday into Friday, and that system will be to the east coast by the end of the week as well. Still the trough off the west coast, though. So the overall pattern, this transition pattern out of La Nina, is going to continue. Here's the way things shape up then for this week. You can see on Monday some snow into northern Rockies, northern plains, scattered showers and thunderstorms through the southeast. This storm system will move on east, and by Wednesday be into the northeastern part of the country. We'll have to watch it. You know, a lot of these have become big snowstorms. This one, if it takes the right track, could again, but right now we're just calling for areas of snow. Dries out again in the southeast, most of the central plains. Next storm system with some rain and mountain snow out west. By Friday then, that storm system moving into the central and eastern Rockies. A little bit of rain and snow out to the east of it, but the next cold front already showing itself with another storm potentially coming in next weekend for the west coast. Let's check out the 30-day outlook for temperatures. I'm going below normal from the mid-Atlantic through the northeast, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, northern plains, northwest, and even down into central California. So a good chunk of the country, but from Texas through the Four Corner region, expected to be warmer than normal over the next 30 days. As far as precipitation is concerned, these storms will come into the west coast. They will pick up Gulf moisture, so those two areas are going to be above normal, and we can hope that some of those areas that are really dry get some of this as well as those storm systems come east. Below normal, though, southwest Texas, southern New Mexico southward, and below normal for the northern plains across the upper Great Lakes into northern New England. Tyne?
All right, thanks so much, Mike. Well, still to come, we have Mike Flores and Joe Vaklovic here. There's so much uncertainty in the markets right now. We'll try to comb through all of that next.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
All right, welcome back. This St. Patrick's Day weekend, time to digest these markets. So much going on this week. So much uncertainty with trade, and we'll get into all of that. But first, let's talk about soybeans. We'd seen a surge in soybean prices. Things were looking good. And then we've seen kind of a retractment away from some of those high prices that we've seen. Really, what is weighing on soybeans right now?
Well, from my perspective, looking at the technical side, we've had, since the market bottomed in mid-January, the funds have added big lengths to the market. They bought somewhere around 950,000 futures contracts in grain, across the board. That's what's put us up. And I view it right now as a great time for some forward sales to occur, or if you're a futures trader, start looking to play the short side. The market, just over the past 2 weeks, the open interest in soybeans and corn has gone up 10%. At the end of market moves, you see big bulges in open interest, and it kind of forms tops. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
So you think we're kind of seeing the top of the market?
Yes, because you can look at the last 2 weeks what the average price of beans has been, and we are below that for the most part.
Okay.
So that puts pressure on liquidation.
Well, Joe, I mean, we've seen that fuel from funds, right, for these soybean prices. We've also seen the concerns on South American weather, particularly in Argentina, and soybean meal really driving up prices. Are we not focused on South America anymore, or is the South American crop better than what we thought?
The South American, the drought story in Argentina had been the driver of soybean prices on the fundamental side for months now. And we're going to get to a point here where that's old news, and maybe we're starting to approach that point. I think the trade has a fairly good idea, or at least some people think they've got an idea as to what the Argentina production numbers are going to be. And once we get past the South American growing season, attention shifts. We start to talk more about demand and maybe more importantly about U.S. production. What sort of crops are we going to produce in this country this year? And we're going to get into that conversation very, very shortly.
Well, I mean, we're already hearing some. I mean, we've got an acreage report out this week, Joe, that calls for about 92 million acres of soybeans by one firm survey, 88 million of corn. That's a pretty wide gap.
It's a big gap. I would be shocked if corn acreage was below 90 million. I would be pleasantly surprised, definitely. It would be a good thing, and it would open up the door to a lot better prices this summer in corn if we could keep that acreage number low. I just don't know if I see that with December corn futures firmly above $4. But anything's possible, and USDA has surprised us on these acreage reports in the past.
What else is adding to corn's story right now?
Well, old crop supplies are coming down, and maybe the acres are going to become a little bit less. Demand for corn is very good, and corn really has only had a 30-cent move up on this whole process. So even though it's overbought technically, I think pullbacks are going to be very well supported on corn. So if you can get halfway back, as an example, that would be a good spot to be looking to be buying corn again. I think we're just in a pause. I think we're going to come in down markets here for a few weeks, 5 weeks or so. But I think that's just a break in a bull market.
You do?
I do. I think we're going to have higher prices before the summer's over.
When he says higher prices before the summer's over, what's realistic with corn, for example?
So a lot of it depends. We've taken our carryout projection for this marketing year. A few months ago, we were talking 2.5 billion bushels. Now we're talking maybe something closer to 2 billion bushels. So we've got a cushion, but not quite the cushion that we had or thought we had a few months ago. When you don't have as big of a cushion, it opens up the door to higher prices.
Right.
But now you're talking weather, and I can't tell you if it's going to rain 4th of July weekend or not in central Iowa and Illinois. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. That's the difference between a corn market that tops at 4.25 and a corn market that tops at 5.25.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what really makes the difference. So at the end of the day, Mother Nature holds the cards here.
Speaking of Mother Nature, this wheat crop, we know it's been dry, some issues with production, but what are you seeing on the charts for wheat? What is that telling you?
Well, we've known this dry weather, and it's been around for a while, yet wheat has really had a big break here. Funds never got long wheat. They pared back on their longs, but they're still short. They're selling the market again. So it looks as if wheat is going to have some near-term pressure on it still, but I don't think there's going to be much more to go.
Only about 20 seconds. What are your thoughts on wheat real quick?
Big drought in the southern plains, not a lot of relief in sight, but at the same time we can't export wheat, and that's a big problem. So you've got positive and negative forces here, certainly.
All right, we're just getting started with this marketing conversation. Need to take a quick break. We'll hear from John Phipps, but later in the program, China, the uncertainty around trade, what it means to prices. We'll talk about that when we come back.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Resicor Corn Herbicide, a uniquely powerful formulation, extraordinary power over weeds.
Well, at the top of the show, we talked about the administration's effort to slap more tariffs on Chinese goods. John actually talked about it some last week, but it's a deep dive into the steel industry that's on tap for this week's John's World. John?
Okay, last week I talked about how it's hard to make any kind of a tariff effective. This week, let's start by looking at our steel industry, the subject of the tariffs. Steel output in the U.S. is roughly the same as it's been for 30 years, and our domestic market share is steady as well. We're only importing about a little less than 30%. We're not being flooded by imported steel. Steel industry employment has fallen over that time, but has been fairly stable since the recession. So if output is the same, why did employment fall? Well, it's not because we imported steel. It's because of technology. And that's reflected on this graph of steel productivity. Farmers should grasp this, as we have endured a similar decline in numbers due to technology like machinery and herbicides and automation. Even if tariffs works, and they don't, this one is aimed at too many allies. China is not a big source of steel for the U.S. It's number 11. And 90% of that's already tariffed. Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Russia, and South Korea are our biggest sources. Many of these countries are also major markets for ag products. In fact, notice this. The biggest steel sources are also our biggest ethanol markets, Canada and Brazil. History proves over and over again that tariffs don't work. In just 10 months, the tariff of 2002, for example, wiped out 200,000 manufacturing jobs and did not increase steel-making jobs. They actually dropped slightly. Although these tariffs were enacted under the justification of national security, both the Secretary of Defense and the National Security Advisor have opposed them all year. So did the Director of the National Economic Council, and he was promptly fired for that opposition. While exemptions for some countries are being suggested, they are contingent on other actions, which seriously complicates other negotiations, especially NAFTA. Foreign governments risk being seen as weak by their own people when they do not retaliate. So here's my summary. Steel-making jobs were the victim of technology. The U.S. steel industry is healthy. The tariffs are the wrong tool being used in the wrong place. They don't work. Tariffs make us less secure by alienating allies, and the U.S. is asking for retaliation, and agriculture has a huge target painted on it. Nebraska Republican Senator Ben Sasse, I think, puts it best. We're on the verge of a painful and stupid trade war, and that's bad. This isn't just bad for farmers and ranchers in Nebraska who need to buy a new tractor. It's also bad for the moms and dads who will lose their manufacturing jobs because fewer people can buy a more expensive product. Temporary exceptions for Canada and Mexico are encouraging, but bad policy is still bad policy. And these constant NAFTA threats are nuts. What he said.
Thanks, John. Well, those tariffs are also a part of a bigger discussion on the rocky relationship between the U.S. and China. We'll tackle that later in the show for a Farm Journal report. But after the break, it's a John Deere enthusiast sharing his passion for this week's Tractor Tales.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Delaro. New Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans can help you get the edge you're looking for to achieve personal best yields. Delaro, keep raising the bar.
Welcome back to Tractor Tales, folks. This week, we're going to Virginia, and we're going to share with you a classic John Deere LA. Stanley Hula Jr. has an interesting story how he acquired this tractor, and now he's proud to have it in his collection.
We've got a LA John Deere tractor that I acquired probably 6-8 years ago. A fella came by and told me that the tractor was for sale. When I went to buy it, a friend of mine had bought it from underneath me, and then he tried to resell it, and I ended up buying it from him. And I told him when I went to buy it, I said, I'll give you exactly what you paid for it. And that's what I got it for. Now, and then I've had it restored since then. We took and tore the motor down, mechanically went through it entirely, and then I have a friend that was a body man that restores the tractors. Again, he disassembled it and painted it and put it in the shape it's in now. In other words, it's restored, and it probably is in better shape now than it was the day it was bought new. It runs good, yes. My health went downhill, and I haven't been able to start these tractors and keep them running like I'm supposed to, and that's why it's not running today. It wouldn't take much to get it started, We use the right gas in it, the leaded gas, so it doesn't mess the carburetors up or anything. And we drain the gas too, so probably within 2 or 3 hours we could have it running. It'll rest here in this museum until either my sons or somebody else decide to dismantle the museum.
Well, still to come as the Trump administration turns up the heat on possible tariffs on Chinese goods. It's the fear of retaliation consuming U.S. agriculture today. We'll have that story after the break.
U.S. Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast. Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. Trusted, timely, tradition.
Welcome back. Well, U.S. soybean growers now trying to play to the president's pain point of a growing trade deficit, saying avoiding a trade war is one way to eat away at the trade gap. But it's uncertainty over future trade relations with China that's hanging over all of agriculture, with concerns of a possible trade war in the works. And that's this weekend's Farm Journal Report. Trade relations between China and the U.S. are now on rocky waters. That's as the Trump administration is turning up the heat on tariffs. The first came in early March when the president announced a 25% tariff on steel imports and a 10% tariff on aluminum.
So steel and aluminum, we'll see a lot of good things happen. We're going to have new jobs popping up. We're going to have much more vibrant companies.
And it's those who want to see domestic steel production grow, like Illinois Representative Rodney Davis, supporting the president's move.
Something had to be done when it came to steel. We've seen government-supported cheap steel being dumped into our country.
He says it's that action that caused a steel plant in Granite City, Illinois, to close. Trump's fair trade approach turned even more strenuous as news broke this week that the president is demanding his top advisors to hit China with steep tariffs in response to allegations of intellectual property theft. And those tariffs could consume more than 100 Chinese products, ranging from electronics to furniture. And it's that news sending an even bigger shockwave through agriculture.
You know, anytime you have the farm economy still kind of lagging in its recovery, disruptions in terms of demand are really testing the nerves of farmers.
Soybean farmers on edge, fearing retaliation on reliable soybean exports to China could be next.
Oh, I think some retaliation is inevitable. I think that the Chinese are kind of sending a message to us to say, you know, or that's the way that they could send the message. Unfortunately, it always seems that agriculture is the first one to go. Right, we just seem to be the easiest target.
We've heard the Chinese say directly that they would retaliate against American soybean imports to that country. That's a huge deal. You know, they buy more of our beans than the rest of the world combined, to the tune of $14 billion last marketing year.
It's that trade disruption that could have a ripple effect and become long-lasting.
It takes a long period of time to cultivate a client and a very short period of time to lose that client. And that's my biggest fear is that now, while you may think that aluminum and steel have nothing to do with soybeans, they have everything to do with soybeans now.
Analysts like Arlen Suderman say when it comes to soybean exports, China is in control.
It's a buyer's market from their standpoint.
Suderman says the wild card for China right now is South America, as the most recent USDA projections slashed Argentina's soybean production estimates over dryness concerns.
I think that they are waiting to see just what is the size of the production there in Argentina, how much will that draw supplies from Brazil, what will be available supplies to them, because the one thing they don't want to do is threaten the availability of protein for supporting their meat industry, because that has a direct impact on food inflation within China.
Meyer thinks while South America isn't the main factor in China's decision on whether to retaliate, Brazil is becoming an even larger player.
I can say that last week, when we saw the big Chinese buys, I would attribute that to the fact that the Brazilian harvest was behind as compared to last year.
And now he fears U.S. soybean crop is a secondary supplier to China, falling behind Brazil.
China's going to import 97 million metric tons. They may import 100 million metric tons this year. But to see their numbers increase and our share of that export number decrease is very concerning.
But it's Chinese demand that some in agriculture say you can't ignore.
You know, in general, 95% of the world's population is living outside of the United States, and a big portion of that, of course, in China itself.
The ambivalent relationship with China is nothing new. Earlier this year, China launched an anti-dumping and anti-subsidy investigation into U.S. sorghum imports, a case that National Sorghum Producer CEO Tim Lust says doesn't stand on solid ground.
We've been very clear that we've had a great relationship with our Chinese buyers. This case was not initiated by our customers. And certainly we want a fair record and a fair case to move forward.
But the move initially proving to be a big blow to U.S. sorghum prices, as China is U.S. sorghum's top buyer.
China's actions on grain sorghum certainly has put a shockwave into the market.
Suderman says as shipments to China have remained fairly strong, there's still doubt hanging over the market, including the motive behind China's case.
Everything China does is to protect China, and they have a huge reserve of corn that they're trying to get rid of. Now they're doing that, but not fast enough. That corn is going out of condition from all indications we can find. And with U.S. grain sorghum going into China, that's displacing corn that they'd like to see going into the feed stream, into the ethanol plants.
While ag groups understand the importance of a major buyer like China, the national wheat growers supporting the administration's World Trade Organization case against China.
They are currently subsidizing their domestic wheat growers at exchange rate would roughly be about $10.40 a bushel. That is costing the U.S. wheat grower about $640 million in lost revenue a year.
Gould wants to protect free trade, becoming vocal about the current administration's actions, possibly losing ground in the world trade arena.
My biggest concern, though, is we have lost some of our leverage and ability to negotiate because we left the agreement, and now there is uncertainty out there in the international arena of if the U.S. comes back and re-engages and doesn't get exactly what they want, are we going to pull back out again?
While it's a balancing act, it's adding more uncertainty to a trade battle that seems to be gaining strength. Now, I also asked Suderman if he thought this uncertainty regarding China hinders the amount of soybeans that farmers actually plant this year. He said he doesn't think that's much of a factor. Right now, it's all about November soybean prices in contrast with the price of December corn futures today. All right, after the break, our marketing discussion continues, hitting on the topic of China and the impact a trade scuffle could have on prices. That's next. All right, welcome back. Continuing our marketing discussion, we just heard about China, possible retaliation, possibly in the form of a tariff on soybeans. If we do see China hit the U.S. with a tariff on soybeans, how quickly does that impact prices?
Immediately. I mean, you'd see a huge sell-off right off the bat. But I don't think very many people are convinced that that is going to happen. China is very concerned regarding food security, regarding things like that, and just national security. I think it's a matter of. So a lot of people don't think it's going to happen, and the market seems to be acting as if it's not going to happen either, because bean prices are still fairly high.
Right. It doesn't seem like it's phased bean prices, but at the same time, can China source enough from other countries to be able to put a tariff, or does it even matter? Like, where does that price? How does that price get passed on to us?
Well, it could be a question of this. Maybe China's waiting to see what they can buy out of Brazil before they do something. I mean, that's one theory. I think the most commonly supported theory is that they're not going to do anything with soybeans, at least. I just don't think they want to hurt the food supply. But crazier things have happened.
Do the funds care at all, Mike?
At some point they will, yeah, because they're the ones that caused the rally in the first place. They were so bearish at the bottom. They had, a lot of short contracts, and so they overextend their welcome both ways. So yeah, at some point they're going to care, and I think it's really kind of around the doorstep of it.
Well, we saw that retracement in prices for beans. Seeing the same with hogs, seeing the same in cattle. I mean, the proteins just have not been fun to watch lately. Let's start with cattle. I mean, when you look at those charts, what is it telling you?
Well, that's exactly what happened. The fund length was too long. In the fall, cattle topped. Funds were big buyers. Open interest really surged at the end of the move, and here we are. We've gone down ever since, and it's because of fund liquidation. Yet we've got tremendous demand for the beef. Our cash prices are higher than where the board is. Yet the cattle market still suffers. So yes, it's the money flows, not necessarily the fundamentals.
Fundamentally, though, what's going on with cattle? I mean, we knew we were seeing a growing herd, right? Mm-hmm. We know demand's been pretty impressive. We knew at some point we'd be reaching that tipping point. Are we there?
We are getting very close, is what the futures market's telling you. You've got a situation where cash cattle traded as high as 128 this week, I believe, and the futures board was $5 discounted to that. And then you've got, futures contracts out into June, August, October that are even much, much cheaper than that. So the market is telling you, at least for the moment, that we might have a little bit of a hole in the cash market up front, but even just weeks out, we're going to be in much better shape from a supply standpoint.
What about hogs? I mean, we've also seen you know, a lot of red on that board too.
Some people would argue that the potential trade issues with China could have an impact there. China, I believe, is the #3 buyer of U.S. pork products. They've also seen big herd expansion in China. So that might be part of the story there. But yes, certainly some weakness in the hogs.
Any other market you're watching?
I like gold is starting to get interesting to me on the upside. I think there's enough commotion in the world to maybe start to see some money flows into that. So gold, keep an eye on gold.
But as we continue to hear, you know, some shakeups in the Trump cabinet, do you expect that uncertainty just weighs on ag commodities specifically?
I don't know if it weighs on anything. I just think that we're in an environment now, really, since Trump's been elected, where there are just more wild cards and more policy risk than ever. Not only do we have the tariff stuff with China, but we've got issues with the RFS. We've got Ted Cruz trying to push this RIN cap issue, which would be a big negative for corn. So there's a lot of policy wild cards out there that we haven't had before, not recently.
All right. Thank you both for being here this week, and we appreciate it. All right, we need to take a quick break, but then we're on the road with Machine and Repeat. We actually head to the East Coast for Machine and Repeat surprise with tractor prices this year. You'll want to stay tuned to hear that.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Corvus Pre-Emergence Corn Herbicide from Bayer, the only herbicide to offer 3 levels of defense against weeds, burn down, residual, and activation with rain. On the road with Machine Repeat is brought to you by John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer.
Well, some farmers are already in the field this St. Patrick's Day weekend, while others are growing another day closer to finally getting in the field this year. And it's strength in planter prices and sales that are catching the eye of Machine and Repeat, as well as dealers like James River Equipment in Virginia. And that's where we head for this week's On the Road with Machine and Repeat.
Which tank is it?
For this third-generation Virginia farmer, challenges are the historical foundation of farming.
You would think prices would be one, you would think the weather would be one, but we farm the banks of James River, so water quality is a big challenge.
He says farming along the James River, he's part of the Chesapeake Bay program. In order to reduce runoff, he hasn't touched these soils with tillage equipment for nearly 30 years, a choice that hasn't hampered yields.
2017, we had our best soybean crop ever.
He said with an average of 52 bushels per acre across his farms, most of those were double crop soybean acres.
We did see some 80 and 90 bushel single crop beans.
While corn yields struggled overall, he had one field break the prized 500 bushel per acre mark, winning the NCGA yield contest and breaking a world record.
We have figured there's 3 good successes for high yield in corn. 1, the good Lord's got to bless you. 2, you got to use Pioneer hybrids, and 3, you got to use John Deere paint. With those 3 things, you're on the way to success.
His crop plan for 2018 is split, but based on his rotation, he's growing half of his acres in corn and the other half will produce soybeans.
I just hate chasing the market because usually I chase the wrong way.
Hula doesn't chase crop prices or tractor deals, instead sticking to an annual rotation.
We run our combines 2 years before we trade them in. We'll run tractors, the larger tractors, 2 years.
Machine and Repeat says it's the interest in tractors that's caught the market by surprise this year.
Auction prices on good condition used tractors, whatever the size, have been just kind of shockingly strong.
And it's still condition that's key.
If it's in nice shape, there's definitely a premium being paid out there. Feels like people are kind of catching up a little bit.
He says it's an uptick that started the first week of November and hasn't slowed down yet.
This market now it's almost beyond solidified a little bit.
But for James River Equipment and their stores across Virginia and North and South Carolina, sales of the big equipment are still lagging.
So our used inventory level is still pretty high, a lot higher than we would like for it to be.
While large ag is suffering, he says it's small ag that continues to shine.
James River's market, we have one of the largest compact utility tractor markets in the United States.
It's the 20 to 100 horsepower market that's in high demand.
A lot of hobby farms, contractors. You never know what the next customer is going to walk in and what their use or application is for a tractor.
Machine and Repeat says nationwide, it's also planters posting impressive prices and sales. And it's planters also gaining strength on the East Coast.
Finally this spring we have seen sort of back to normal inventory levels. We've sold a lot of our aged inventory, and there's quite a high demand for the used planters.
With newer planters comes new technology, but Fleet says it's all about finding the right fit for your farm.
Because it also comes back to who's in the driver's seat, who's holding that steering wheel. They have to be comfortable with the technology and the the level of driver input it takes to understand the planter and feel comfortable.
For Hula, technology drives most of his equipment purchasing decisions.
We do like to keep up with the technologies. It's just like seed. They change new hybrids every year or every so often. Well, so does the equipment manufacturers.
He says the planter is the most beneficial tool on his farm, and that's where the data collecting begins.
Where did we get the best singulation? Where do we have the right down pressure? Just from the planting technology. And then we start correlating that with emergence, and then we start using our sprayers to make variable rate applications.
As planting 2018 quickly approaches, Hula says he's ready for when Mother Nature says it's go time.
We hope we get a good spring like we had in 2017, where we have decent moisture, good temperatures, and then the good Lord shine on us and we do all the things that we can do. I'm like every other grower. I want to maximize my yields.
Yields that continue to climb, proving the yield ceiling may be higher than most farmers think.
Now, Machinery Pete says this weekend, or St. Patrick's Day, is typically a pivotal point for the used equipment market to see if prices hold. That's due to the amount of regional consignment sales just before the start of planting in the Midwest. So he says the next couple weeks will be key to see if prices can hold. Well, up next, John Phipps has this week's customer support.
Are drones the answer? I don't think so.
Your call is very important to us. Please hold.
Well, you've heard us ask the question on the show before. Are drones truly a toy on the farm, or are they a tool? And it's the topic of this week's customer support.
Edward Gade asks about the latest craze in ag technology. Watch Farm Report every Sunday. Recent episode showed spraying wheat fields and mentioned a 2% loss due to running over grain with tires. Got me thinking, why not invent a drone sprayer? Maybe I just lost out on another one of my inventions. Well, thanks for writing, Edward, and I've got good news. You probably haven't lost out on anything. Let me preface my answer with the admission up front that I'm not a big fan of drones. Your suggestion is one reason. Drones have very little carrying capacity. The ones being splashed all over farm magazines would be hard-pressed to carry a can of Raid to kill a grasshopper, for example. To date, the most practical application for these devices is sensing or optical equipment like cameras. The idea is a drone can fly over the crop and detect a problem. But in order to correct any of those possible issues requires, on almost all cases, a sprayer, either ground or aerial. The amount of spray solution to treat a problem on just 1 acre would be at least 3 gallons by air and much more with a ground sprayer. Now, 3 gallons is about 25 pounds, and so a drone capable of carrying enough to treat even a handful of acres would essentially be a remote-controlled helicopter and would not be cheap. Drones are good for detecting possible crop problems, but doing anything about it will require serious ground or air machinery to carry the weight involved. My other doubt about this fad is if you happen to watch my commentary recently about the new Starlink satellite system, I think I mentioned such detection chores will soon be dominated, I think, by low-altitude satellites. Farmers will be able to subscribe to surveillance services that could offer nearly real-time imagery of their fields. I consider modern drones merely upgrades of what we geezers knew as RC, radio-controlled model airplanes. I don't doubt they're fun to fly, but they won't stop a fungus in your crop without big steel helping.
Thanks, John. And if you have questions or comments for John, just email him at mailbag@usfarmreport.com. Well, we need to take a quick break, and then from snow to prepping to plant, we have viewer photos to share next. Well, I know some of you are staring at snow out your window this St. Patrick's Day weekend. But it's go time for some people to plant in the South, Mike. Matthew Davis said they were busy planting rice in Jackson County, Arkansas, and conditions, well, they look primed to plant this week.
In Texas, some corn has been in the ground since February. Our friend Lindsay Kimbrell snapped some pictures of February planted corn. She says it's coming up nicely and loving the sunshine lately.
And Lindsay Wortley received an outstanding honor recently. Her mom says she's actually a 7th grader in Summersville, Missouri, Mike, but recently placed first in the Missouri State Beta Convention with her project in recycled art. Check this out. She used a variety of old farm products to create her rustic piece, including welding the pieces together herself.
Wow.
And now she heads to Georgia for the national competition. Stick with that welding technique because there is a desperate need for female welders.
I've never done it, so I don't know how.
It's not easy. Not easy. All right, Mike. So here we are, St. Patrick's Day. Some people looking to plant. You know, do you see this weather pattern that we've been under shifting?
Not at the moment. This is a transition pattern that we're going through, and it's a pretty volatile pattern with a lot of storms east and west, and some of them coming through the middle of the country.
All right, thanks, Mike. Well, if you have any pictures or videos you would like to share, you can send that to the address on the screen.
From all of us at U.S. Farm Report, I'm Mike Hoffman.
And I'm Tyne Morgan. Thank you for watching U.S. Farm Report this St. Patrick's Day weekend. Be sure to join us again right here next week as we work to build on our tradition. Have a great weekend, everyone.
U.S. Farm Report has been brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest-lasting heavy-duty pickups. U.S. Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast.